it is absolutely legit to have a scientific interest in the possibility of alien life, especially intelligent life forms. But you also have to face the possibility that you're not going to find what you're looking for. So maybe during our lifetime, we will not find any real proof of alien life, and we may never find any definitive proof of alien life. You know, that's part of science. You don't necessarily get what you want. So it's legit to have that scientific interest. What I don't want is just another cult, and what I also don't want is just nonsense by the government. So I've done a study on 200 years worth of conspiracy literature, and it turned out that this whole genre was created by essentially British intelligence. And governments have cultivated this further and used it further. And this is a very interesting study. I will be doing a more in-depth video about that. So you see this kind of full spectrum dominance. So the ruling circles, powerful circles, they want to control the political left, the center, the right, libertarians, and traditional conspiracy ideology. So there's something for everyone. So you can go and pick and choose one of these controlled fields of ideology. And that way you feel as if you're free, or at least more free than you would feel in a traditional tyrannical system, where you only have one thing, and there's just this one ideology that you have to follow. Now, if we have this full spectrum dominance, and even if... even when the traditional conspiracy narratives are under control, what is to expect of this alien UFO phenomenon? So according to research, about 50% of Americans believe there are intelligent life forms and they're sort of visiting us, or probably visiting us. This is what half the United States believe, and mostly the credibility comes from military people saying something about this, or people from the intelligence community mentioning aliens and UFOs. So if it comes from that direction, then it has this credibility, and obviously you have to be aware of manipulation. So a couple of days ago, there were these UFO hearings, and some guy called David Grush from military intelligence, and he gave some testimony and other people gave testimony, and they were not just talking about strange things on radar screens or strange things on other screens that military planes are using, but no, they were talking about actual alien spacecraft and dead bodies of alien pilots. So it's just a bunch of hearsay, just a bunch of words. And that sent many millions of people into a frenzy. So we've seen these sort of statements for decades. You know, this is not something new. For many decades, we've heard people from the military and intelligence community saying something very, very similar. Actual spacecraft and actual alien pilots. So this David Grush guy, he now fashions himself as this great whistleblower, and his lawyer seems to be very, very connected to the intelligence community, and he claims that what he's doing is very, very dangerous. People have been killed trying to reveal all this, but at the same time, of course, Hollywood has been pushing the same narrative for a long time. So basically, the establishment wants people to believe in aliens. This is in all kinds of movie franchises, all kinds of video game and computer game franchises. So which is it? Is it being suppressed or is it being pushed? And the UFO alien activist community, they're claiming both. So they never really have to explain the paradox, right? So whenever you criticize the lack of any real physical evidence, then the answer is, well, it's being suppressed and it's dangerous to find any evidence. But when it's being pushed everywhere in Hollywood, And when the military is, or military people and intelligence people are claiming this stuff, then the answer is, yeah, well, there's part of the establishment that wants people to know. Okay, so which is it? David Grush used to work for the National Reconnaissance Office. They're into spy satellites, and he was representing the NRO to the Office for UFO, for the UFO phenomenon at the Department of Defense, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Current director of this office is Sean Kirkpatrick, who used to work for the CIA. Another important guy is Ronald Moultrie, formerly CIA and NSA. Aliens supposedly have crashed, and we've heard that for decades. Apparently they crash all the time. Why would they crash if they can actually come from different worlds and do this interstellar travel? And there's been some talk even by this David Grush guy in French media. There's been some talk about multi-dimensional or interdimensional stuff. So if they're that advanced, why do they crash all the time? Why do they just fly around for decades for no apparent reason and waste all that time? You know, if they want to take us over, why haven't they taken us over? If they want to establish formal connections and diplomatic relations, why haven't they done so? If they want to present themselves, why haven't they presented themselves? What are they doing? Why are they crashing? Why do they supposedly land somewhere and just look at people and then get back in the spaceship and fly off? What is this? So, Hollywood has been spreading this a lot, and this Mr. Grush said he didn't have access to these super secret programs, so he's giving us a bunch of hearsay. We hear stories from this guy about stories about UFOs the size of a football field. Now, where have we heard that before? Well, for example, the old Bill Cooper used to claim these things. Remember Bill Cooper, who was a big shot in the conspiracy movement in the 1990s? He had this book out, which was terrible, right? Behold a Pale Horse, and that was the title of the book, and it was completely horrible. Basically, every chapter, or almost every chapter, was just copy and paste from terrible sources. Most of it was complete garbage. I mean, even from a conspiracy buff perspective, it was complete garbage. There were maybe one or two chapters apparently written by Cooper himself, and this was completely worthless. He just strung a bunch of names together of different groups and covering old material. So the only real draw that he had was the UFO alien thing. Now, he puffed up his past in the military, and he claimed to have been this super connected guy, super high ranking, and he had access to all these documents about UFOs and alien relationships, and that's how he presented himself. So he faked everything. He was completely lying. He was fabricating things to get noticed, to get famous. And so what is the difference between Bill Cooper and this David Grush? Well, Grush had a legitimate career in security, government security circles, but what they're saying is still kind of the same thing. So you have to ask yourself: is this Grush guy going to start his own show? Will he sell books? Is he gonna tour? Will he work as an influencer? Will he become a multimillionaire? You have to ask these questions. If you want to be scientific about UFOs and aliens, you have to understand bias and you have to understand conflicts of interest. So in the UFO alien influencer circles, you basically have to tell the audience what they want to hear. You have to deliver confirmation they want. Otherwise, you're out of business or you can't get into the business. That's just how it is. And so Grush's lawyer is Charles McCulloch, Inspector General of the Intelligence Community. Interesting. Then you saw quotes in some media, quotes by a certain of a certain Jonathan Gray, supposedly a high-ranking intelligence officer working for National Air and Space Intelligence Center and stuff. So this guy may not even exist. It's a pseudonym. Don't know exactly who's behind it. Maybe this has already been public, who's behind this. And this supposed person said, we're not alone. There's alien intelligence, and it's a global phenomenon, and we need a global solution for that. Okay, so apparently this is a problem, and somebody wants to give us a solution for that problem. What's that solution going to be, right? I mean, so some people claim to only be interested, or mainly be interested in the pure UFO phenomenon, right? Flying objects, we don't know what it is, no aliens, they claim, or they're not even talking about aliens right now. But what's the interest in, why would it be so interesting if a new drone gets tested or a new EMP weapon gets tested? There's new stuff all the time. Why would it be interesting? It's only interesting to people when there's supposedly aliens attached to it. And the aliens are only interesting to people if they're either a threat, they could harm us, or they offer us solutions, they could help us, right? Because if they can't harm us and they can't help us, they're pointless. Why would we even care? Why would we bother that much? And the aliens are not going to improve gas prices, they're not going to improve inflation, they're not going to improve the job market. So this is what this is about. And oftentimes the sheer UFO phenomenon is sort of the gateway drug into a full-blown alien cult. People are lured in, and they're being told all these stories about, relationships between the government, the US government, and the aliens. Then next comes the stuff that aliens basically created us, or halfway created us. So we used to be these primitive, man monkeys, and then the aliens came and they had intercourse with our women, and the children then became what we are today. So they are the creators. They're like the engineers, like in the movie Prometheus by Sir Ridley Scott. Where they find these engineers, and they're sort of similar to us, but they're different from us. And we don't even know why they created us, just because they could, because they thought it was interesting. And what's interesting in the movie Prometheus and other movies, not just from that franchise, but other franchises too, and you also find that in books by Zechariah Sitchin or Eric von Däniken, it's this idea that these aliens not just created us, but they had an influence, a continuous influence on us. So they kept visiting us, and they gave us technology, and they built magical pyramids and all that. And so we supposedly can find the traces on old stone tablets and wall paintings and that sort of thing. And at some point they're going to return for whatever reason, and they're going to establish a new sort of order, control, or they're going to help us or whatever. So it becomes this full-blown cult. It has all the elements of a cult, and every other topic becomes boring in comparison. Why would you care about the Russians when there's aliens? Why would you care about, anything when there's aliens? There's no bigger threat, potentially, and there's no bigger help than intelligent alien life form. Then you see quotes. Some people are quoting a certain Christopher Mellon, the intelligence guy at the DoD, and he was somehow involved in the UFO topic. He's from the old Mellon family, which is dangerous family. And so what are they saying? Are the aliens a problem? So what's the solution to the problem? We have to submit to the US government. We have to submit to the US military. Sort of like in the movie Independence Day. Global threat, global solution. This is how you make a world government, sort of. And then you have these the military circles running everything, saving everybody. So there's a definitive cult element to the UFO and alien activism. You're supposed to get into it, deeper into it, and you're being motivated to be around other people in the cult, and you're sort of expected to lose interest in people who are not in the cult, or you view people outside of the cult as stupid or cowardly or even malicious or suspicious. This is the same as in every other cult. So the core hypothesis of the alien UFO activist movement, this core hypothesis is you can't falsify it. So no matter how many things are being proven to be false and fake and misleading, they will still carry on. So they just claim nothing has been disproving our core idea. And of course you can't watch the entire universe, so you can't exactly disprove the core hypothesis, but the proof of burden is on them. They have to prove that this is actually worth our time. It's not only about definitive proof for alien intelligent life form, and that they're visiting us or whatever. It's not just about that definitive proof. It's about how much time are we expected to spend on following these leads, because time is valuable, especially activist time. How much activist time do you have, and how much activist money can you spend each week or each month? And the more you get into this UFO thing, the more time this will eat up. And if you're wrong about this, if this is a pointless goose chase, you're causing damage. You're wasting time and wasting valuable money. And it's entropy. There's so many supposed sightings and supposed landings and supposed crash, and it's endless. And something gets exposed as a fake. Oh, here's 5 new things. So you have to be careful. Especially if you're interested in alien life form. And you have to be even more careful. And this core aspect of the UFO alien activist movement, this is something we see in every cult, we see in every religion. They never accept the possibility that they're wrong, fundamentally wrong. The core ideas are never falsifiable. So, in the next couple of years or maybe decades, if we see stronger evidence or maybe even evidence that looks conclusive, could this be still human origin? Could somebody be faking this thing, with nanotech and artificial intelligence, so some new nuclear bombs, anti-matter stuff, and whatever the wizards, the physicists are coming up with? How do we actually distinguish that? It becomes really, really difficult, right? So you can't just jump on every bandwagon and claim this question has been solved. Some people on Earth, they may present a supposed alien wreck or parts of a shipwreck. How do we distinguish if it's human origin? Or somebody presents dead body of a supposed alien, or part of a dead body, or maybe even a living supposed alien, and we're being told that their genetics are not too different from us, but how do we distinguish if this thing or creature hasn't been made in a lab? So it's not that simple, right? So even if in a couple of years people accept this idea completely in public, you still have to be really, really careful about this. And so this Grush guy, during the Congress hearings, he was talking about government disinformation about UFOs. And of course, we know now that especially in the 1980s, the movement had been infiltrated by government agents, especially the FOSI office of the United States Air Force. And these Air Force officers, they were spreading false documents, especially the Majestic 12 stuff about human-alien relationships and secret communication projects like Aquarius and all that. So this turned out to be completely fake. But and this was a huge embarrassment to the UFO alien movement. But even to this day, things haven't improved in the activist movement. So they're still making up new stuff, and they're still clinging to the old fakes, as we will see in a minute here. They want to perpetuate the old Majestic 12 fakes and the Roswell fakes, and they will never let go of these things. So wishful thinking is your biggest enemy. Many people want aliens to exist who save us or establish a new order or whatever. So you can't turn this into a religion, and you're not supposed to be in an echo chamber of people who confirm each other in their belief system. In 2022, the Pentagon started a new Office for Psychological Warfare. The Intercept got a document about the Influence and Perception Management Office. And then there's a private security corporation tied into this, Sancorp Consulting. This was reported by Mint News. And this private company worked for the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office of the Pentagon. And they're supposed to deal with this alien phenomenon, or a UFO phenomenon. So, the secret documents... but a Navy office, Navy information warfare. This is called N2 N6, and apparently they're covering all this UFO stuff for the Pentagon. So there's obviously a danger of the government managing the perception of the alien phenomenon. So they're maybe behind this stuff that we're seeing everywhere. The activist scene may still be infiltrated, and there's false information being floated around. But always, UFO and alien activists, they consider everything to be a confirmation of their core belief. So even if a massive fake is being exposed, they interpret that as a confirmation of their core belief. They will say, well, if the government is faking something, that means they're hiding something, and they take this seriously, so aliens must exist. Or they claim it was not 100% fake, it was just partially fake, and somebody had to mix truths with fakes to get some information out, blah, blah, blah. So there's always a way to interpret that in a certain way, which the activists, a way that the activists like and the audience likes. And this is also behavior we saw from traditional religion and every cult out there. So if they're announcing the end of the world and it's not happening, they will just change the date. Or they make certain claims that are being disproven by science, and then they just adjust the claims. Or a core document is exposed as a fake, and then they claim, well, it's based on something real, or it was partially real, or whatever. It's cult behavior. And so if you look at this from a broader perspective, what function could the alien UFO movement have? Now, for thousands and thousands of years of imperialist history, you had the phenomenon of government-run cults and religions. And anytime an empire takes over new territories, or many times they take over new territories, it was not smart to tell people in the new territories that their religion was complete baloney and they have to adopt a new religion, a completely new religion. It's smarter to integrate the old religion with the new one. So, for example, the city god of Marduk was later changed into a more powerful super god, and family relations of these family lines, the family links were changed, so it was always adapting to whatever the empire needed. So you're telling people, yeah, your gods are real, but this is the super god, and it's all tied together. And this is how empires do it. And as we saw in movies such as Prometheus and many others, or recently I was in a movie theater with my 8-year-old son watching the new Transformers movie, and it's the whole series is about aliens, the good ones and the bad aliens, and how they've been visiting us in the past and artifacts. And in the new Transformer movie, one character works at a museum, and she knows all this history and the historical artifacts. There's hidden symbols and stuff. So this is basically Eric von Däniken, or this is Zechariah Sitchin, or this is the same you see in many, many other franchises. This idea that the aliens have been visiting us, and you can see this in the pyramids and all temples. And so we can pretty much see where this is going. Aliens and UFOs, they can tie different religions together, and they can provide a new core for human history, especially ancient history. So you're not telling people all over the world your religion was bogus, but you can tell them your religion was mostly true, but there's this core element, which is the aliens. And you know, some miracles actually happened of that particular religion, but these miracles had something to do with the aliens and that sort of thing. So this is how you could tie all these religions together, which is important for imperialism. And traditional religion has become stale and boring. Even ideologies have become stale and boring, because many modern ideologies, for example, socialism, they're structured like a cult. They're built like a cult. So all this stuff has become boring. And you still have the fanatics. You still have fanatical believers, but the excitement is gone, because everything has been so frustrating. And the only fresh new thing is the alien element. And this is something you have to keep in mind. So so nothing has changed with this imperial technique to use religion like this. And so if, especially the Americans and the Brits, if they have been controlling traditional conspiracy media for 200 years, why wouldn't they control the UFO alien activist movement? This is something you have to be aware. And even for many decades, there was nothing new in conspiracy literature. When was the last breakthrough in conspiracy literature? I mean, people stopped reading books altogether, basically, in conspiracy circles. So the last book that comes to mind was Cooper's book in the 1990s, which was horrible. And he was only sort of famous because of the alien topic, because he faked everything. And before that, you had the John Birch Society, which had best-selling books, sold millions of copies each, but this was very baseline stuff, about, the Trilateral Commission and Bilderberg and, CFR. Very, very baseline, not very sophisticated. And the core of the John Birch Society conspiracy books, the core was just older conspiracy literature. And the old mythologies about tiny little banker families taking over the British colonial empire and that sort of garbage. So nothing really progressed in conspiracy literature and conspiracy culture. And the only new exciting thing for people were the aliens. Same as in every other religion, same as in every other ideological cult. So I did some reports in German on the Congress hearing and the problems in the 80s when, the UFO activist movement was exposed. And some UFO activists, they started complaining that I was just tying the UFO phenomenon into aliens, and this was sort of separate and whatnot. And I'm not supposed to talk about this in a negative way. I have to read current UFO activist literature before I make any statement and all that sort of stuff. So some people actually are just interested in the UFO thing, but some people are actual cult members of the UFO alien cult, and they just don't want to admit that in public on social media, and they just want to draw new people into the cult by using this gateway entryway drug, the UFO sightings, and then get people into the full cult. So you have to be aware of that. And UFO literature activist literature has not changed in many decades. It's just the same over and over again. So people told me I had to read Richard Dolan. Richard Dolan claims to have studied at the Oxford University, almost received a Rhodes Scholarship, which is based on the British colonial empire. Couldn't confirm that so far. And his main books are this is a 2-volume series, UFOs and the National Security State. So I picked the second volume because it deals with the more modern times, and this would theoretically increase the possibility that we get some, footage or something, because of technology, how it improved. But there's no actual real evidence, and there's also nothing really in context. So he's trying to work through volume. He's giving you more and more stuff. And the core argument is, if there's so much stuff, reports about sightings and spaceships and alien dead bodies and whatnot, if there's so much stuff, there has to be something to it. It has to be true. There have to be aliens. But this is not a valid argument. I mean, there's so many religions and so many cults out there, and there's so many members, and they have believed nonsense for so long. It's still not true, even if many people have been active in these movements. So the argument by mass doesn't really work. Scores. He's talking about scores of reports by former military people and intelligence people. Scores of reports of crashed aliens. Why would they crash all the time? If they can cross these distances through space and come here, why would they crash all the time? Well, if you don't have any crash stories, then it's just too elusive. They could fly around and land and take off again, and they're never seen again. So there have to be stories about supposed crashes. Otherwise, the whole thing doesn't really work. The whole narrative doesn't work. And why did we never get any convincing video footage? So if there's so many people involved, supposedly with crash landings and dealing with these crashed ships and aliens, why is there never a convincing video? I mean, today's camera technology, they get tinier and better all the time, but we never get a convincing video. Something that you can't fake with computer effects. Something that is not shaky cam, shot through a bush or something, but something convincing. Why do we never get that? I mean, at some point you have to ask yourself, is this whole topic worth your time? Is this activism worth your time? Every police unit, every intelligence unit, they always have to reevaluate, is this worth our time? Is this worth our resources? And you can't justify the expending resources if you're never turning something up that is somewhat conclusive or at least interesting enough. So this Dolan guy, this best-selling UFO author, this guy is talking about the 1980s and the fiasco about the Majestic 12 documents. And these documents supposedly told the story of how the US government has relations with aliens, and this is how this is all organized and covered up. But this was completely fake. This was spread around by the United States Air Force. Just basic disinformation. So the UFO activists, leading UFO influencers at the time, they fell for it, and they just kept confirming each other. So they were hyping each other up into a frenzy. They wanted to present this supposed evidence at a big conference. It was called the MUFON conference, but then some other guy, influencer, got on stage and told a story about how the government has infiltrated the community and how they were spreading false stuff. So this was a major failure. And then, of course, you had successful influencers and authors such as Bill Cooper, who was a complete fraud. So he claimed to be the best UFO guy out there, and all the other UFO guys, they started to hate him because he was faking all these documents. So they asked him, can we look at your documents? Can we come visit you? And where's your address? And then he said, well, my garage is burnt down and all the documents are gone. So the activists asked him, well, where do you live so we can confirm this fire with the local fire department? And there was no answer from Bill Cooper. So he faked everything, and he was successful because the audience wanted to hear that stuff. So it's not just the influencers who acted in a bad way, it was also the audience. And so this Dolan guy, nowadays, he wants to tell the story of that mess, of that fiasco during the 80s. He wants to tell the story, but he wants to make it sound as if it wasn't such a big failure. As if it was excusable. There was truth to the Majestic 12 documents. That activists did the best they could at the time. So what Dolan is doing is he is perpetuating a myth that was launched and spread by the United States government as disinformation. There hasn't been any improvement in UFO activist circles, right? So you should learn how the game is played. You should learn how the intelligence game works. You know, what's good information? How do you react after a major failure, a major breach? No successful intelligence agency can act like the UFO alien activists are acting. You know, you can't perpetuate failures. You can't just stick to fake material and then think, well, maybe it's based on something true, or maybe it's, you know, there's a mix of falsehoods and truth, and maybe we can, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't really work like that. And UFO activists are copying what Dolan says, his line of reasoning. So if you mention the old Majestic 12 problems, and if you mention how bad the activism was at the time, today's activists, they will look at you in a hostile way, and they will complain that it's not fair to talk about these failures, that it's, long past, and it doesn't have any effect whatsoever, negative effect on activism today. But as you can see in Dolan's book, they're perpetuating these old falsehoods. And they're trying to make it look more nice, even though it was a complete failure. So Dolan keeps shoveling this stuff in your direction. Another sighting, another crash, another sighting, another crash. And he mixes it with basic stuff about the government, year by year, what was happening. And then in between, he claims he's spoken to high-ranking or super high-ranking people from the CIA and in military circles. And of course, these people confirm the existence of aliens and whatnot, but we cannot confirm that Dolan spoke to these people. We don't even know who these people are. Or we can't confirm that what Dolan has been told is actually true. So it is entirely possible that people have been busy with activism for so long, but there's still no aliens, or there's still no real proof of aliens whatsoever. So this whole phenomenon can be basically fake or an artifact, and you have to be aware of this. Maybe in the future we will get total conclusive evidence of aliens, and they will visit us, and things will change. Maybe this is going to happen, but so far, don't get excited. No one's coming to save you, right? You have to make up your own mind. You have to be active. You can't just rely on a fantasy. So many people out there, they want aliens to exist. And people tend to believe, on average, what they want to believe, whether it's socialism or some cult or whatever. And and Dolan is talking about, Dolan is mentioning some baseline conspiracy stuff. He's talking about the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, which sounds so old. I mean, it's what conspiracy buffs have been talking about forever, many, many decades, and there's never been any improvement in conspiracy media. The powerful circles and really, really old intelligence networks, big networks, they're so vast and it's so complex, and this is so much more interesting than the standard talk about Rothschilds and Rockefellers. But so Dolan really doesn't know anything more than what's been in conspiracy literature for decades. And I noticed an interesting parallel, which is a parallel between these fake Majestic 12 documents and the fake protocols of Zion. So at some point, the protocols of Zion were exposed as a complete fake. Anybody could have faked it because the baseline literature already existed for decades. So there were, especially in Germany here or Britain, starting about in the mid 1800s, there were many books repeating the same stuff over and over again, which was British disinformation, but that's for another day for me to explain. They were pushing, many books were pushing this stuff, so anybody who had these books could have faked the protocols of Zion. And it was even exposed what material was copied from to write the protocols. So exact source material. And instead of just admitting, okay, the whole thing was fake, it's not evidence, it's completely pointless, instead of admitting that, the activists at the time and still today, they were still clinging to these protocols. So they were claiming it's based on something real, and the false stuff in it, the copied stuff in it that was put in deliberately to throw people off track. There must have been some older documents that this was based on. And it must be true because of all this context we're giving you. And it's a mix of falsehoods and truths and whatnot. So it's always the same kind of explanation. And it's the same explanation for the protocols, same as with the Majestic 12 documents. And and then of course, Dolan is talking about Hollywood, and he's not really mentioning how big the UFO alien thing is in Hollywood. But instead he's picking one little example. Steven Spielberg supposedly asked NASA to help him with the UFO movie Close Encounters. And NASA wanted to talk Spielberg out of that movie, supposedly. And this movie supposedly was reflecting real UFO research. So what? Spielberg was now a whistleblower, truth teller? Is that what it means? And what about all these tons of other movies since then spreading this alien narrative? I mean, I was just in a movie theater with my 8-year-old son watching the new Transformers movie, and it's the same thing. Aliens, aliens, aliens. The good ones, the bad ones, government relationships. And, protagonists working with government, the US government especially, the military intelligence. It's always the same thing. And anytime a UFO alien fake is revealed, is exposed, reaction is always the same. Activists say, well, it doesn't mean anything that it's fake because there's so many sightings and salvage operations, so the alien thing must be true. Then they say, well, the government spread that fake, and if they're spreading a fake, they're hiding something real, so the aliens must be real. And then they say the fake still has traces of the truth, and somebody had to mix truth with falsehoods. It's always the same thing. It's always the same thing. And every religion acts like that. So if something is exposed as a fake, cue the standard response. And so this Dolan book goes on and on and on. And the whole so this entire work of Dolan is just confirmation. It's like a religious text. It's just confirming what the audience already believes and what they want to believe. And Dolan is mentioning a book called Exempt from Disclosure, and involved in that book was Richard Doty from the US Air Force. And Doty was the guy faking all this stuff and manipulating all these activists. And it was basic intelligence work, what the Air Force did back at the time, especially this AFOSI office. They were recruiting people in the UFO movement, recruiting sources, and they were giving these people, these sources, they were giving them fake stuff, which looked interesting. So with this stuff, the activists could become more famous, but the price, of course, was spreading falsehoods, and the other price was information. So you had to tell the Air Force what's going on in UFO activist circles, who had new photos, who saw something. Because oftentimes these UFO activists, they were camping outside of military bases and they were photographing things, real things, human things. Sometimes they even photographed crashed new experimental secret airplanes, like a stealth bomber maybe. And so the Air Force wanted to know who had anything new. This was classic espionage. And it was also, you can read that in the book Mirage Man, there was also a concern that Russian Soviet intelligence was infiltrating the UFO movement to gain information about secret projects. Human projects, but still secret. And so Dolan is quoting this book mentioning this book Exempt from Disclosure, which had the involvement of Richard Doty from the US Air Force. And inside Exempt from Disclosure, you find copies of 3 supposed secret documents from the CIA and the alleged Majestic 12 organization. And Dolan says, I talked to a high-ranking guy from the CIA who thinks these old documents are real. So, again, today's UFO activists are perpetuating old lies, old myths. And this is how the game is. This is how the game is played. So, what is the big picture? Supposed big picture, because if you read the 2-volume series by Dolan, you just get a bunch of supposed sightings and crash landings. There's no interpretation. We don't get to hear his idea of who the aliens are, what do they want, what are they capable of. And so you have to buy more books by Dolan where he tries to give you a bigger picture. Of course, Dolan has to work with the source material that he's got, which is, of course, old stuff that we've seen for decades. So how is he going to tell us who the aliens are and what they want? So in the book Alien Agendas, you get to hear these ideas that, maybe it's a threat, maybe they're going to help us. Then you get the old stuff that we've heard so many times, that the aliens created us, basically, and you have to be a spiritual person, and he talks about his wife, who's a very spiritual person. So what he's essentially telling you is get in the alien cult and stay in the alien cult. And some people are going to use psychedelics, and then they get even more into the cult. And I've recently done a video on psychedelics, how it is going to be the next big thing in therapy. And it's also the next big thing in every ideological group out there. So any political cult out there, anything big, they all use more and more psychedelics. Not just the left wing, like in the 60s or whatever. Not just the eco movement, but also the right wing. Everybody's using psychedelics now. Conspiracy buffs have been using this for a long time, and it just confirms to people what they already believe in, and it creates a sense of specialness and brotherhood and whatnot. So, this is basically what you're getting. And Dolan is complaining about transhumanism and transgenderism and 5G mobile networks and artificial intelligence. So basically he's giving you baseline stuff you can find anywhere else about the dangers of modern technology. And of course, you can never tell what's human technology and what's alien technology, because most people are totally not familiar with physics and engineering, and things get really, really complicated, especially with quantum mechanics and multi-dimensions that experts have been doing calculations about. So there's still many, many secrets of the universe, and we humans are not good enough and smart enough for some of these tasks. So it's a big problem with technology, and of course the big opportunities with technology. So even the leading UFO alien activists, influencers, Even guys like Dolan, who claim to have many great sources in the intelligence agencies and whatnot, even he cannot tell you who these aliens really are and what they really want, because the source material is so bad. Like the Roswell incident, people still cling to this Roswell incident. So you get these old photos of basically tinfoil, and back in 1947, all it took was a press release to get people excited about a flying disc. And then decades later, a huge hype was created about this old non-incident with the tinfoil. And in 1995, a fake movie was presented, a fake alien autopsy. This was released by Ray Santilli, a London-based video entrepreneur. This footage created a huge hype all around the world. And then it was revealed it was fake. Santilli admitted in 2006 that it was a fake, but then he claimed it was based on something real. So it was based on genuine footage, which is unfortunately lost. So he acts the same way as we've seen so many times by UFO activists. Something is exposed as a fake, well, then you claim it's based on something real, and it was truth mixed with lies. Right? And so you can only go from these supposed crashes, like in Wales, 1974, supposed landings, the Spain reports, then in the 70s, the Malmstrom Air Force Base reports in Montana. This is all you can work with in UFO circles. How are you supposed to tell who these aliens are and what they want? And then in the 1980s, Richard Doty from the US Air Force, the FOC office, he was meeting with UFO activists, and he talked about Majority 12. He called it Majority 12 at the time, which then became Majestic 12. And when that was discovered to be fake, Bill Cooper said, no, it was not really called Majestic 12. The real name was Majesty 12. And he knows about this disinformation plan. If people get too close to the truth, then this disinformation would be launched. But it was actually called Majesty 12, not Majestic 12 and whatnot. And it was such a mess. Activism was such a mess, and it still is. We're always changing the story, and it's really, really pathetic. And so Doty was talking about these aliens, and they come from a planet, supposedly, that's what he said, they come from a planet which is like a desert, which is really hot, and they live in these mud huts and huts made from rock. like Pueblo Indians. It was complete garbage. This is how people imagine aliens to be, like in the movie Star Wars. Luke Skywalker's home planet or some other planets, and you see aliens living in these rock and mud huts. It's ridiculous, right? That's what activism was. That's what activism was at the time. And then you had the Benevitz fail. He was photographing stuff, real stuff, even maybe real debris. And he was listening to secret communications from the military installation. And so the government decided to drive him insane. They gave him some computer that interpreted the signals and gave Benevitz a bunch of garbage. But he was becoming increasingly paranoid. He thought he was involved in the most important thing in the whole world. And he became, mentally unstable. So he was destroyed. And that came out later. But even today, activism, such as the one from Dolan, they tried to make this old Benevitz incident to make it look better than it was. Much better than it was. So, the final verdict of this whole thing, do not get into another cult. Look at yourself. Are you drawn into cults? Are you already in a cult? Are you vulnerable for cult mechanisms? Are you looking for a cult? Do you feel lonely? Do you feel people are boring? Or are you not in actual real networks? Are you not part of something real? you really have to be careful because, there's bad intentioned entrepreneurs out there who want to make money off of you with an alien cult, and there's also the government who has the incentive to cultivate an alien cult. Because as I said in the beginning, that's how empires work. They try to control religion. They want to combine existing religions with, new material. And in this case, this new material would be the alien stuff. This is being pushed by Hollywood. So it's not an interesting niche you found on the web. It's a mass phenomenon. And half of America believes in these aliens now, or these spaceships, and so it is a mass phenomenon. You haven't found anything special. No one's coming to save you. You cannot operate under the assumption that aliens are going to save you, or the Russians are going to save you, or Donald Trump is going to save you, or some Republicans are going to save you, or whatever. That this is not going to work. It's a two-party cartel in the United States, and they want to offer something to everyone. If you're conservative, if you're left-wing, if you're this, if you're that, if you're libertarian, if you're conspiracy buff, if you're into aliens, they want to offer something for everyone. So this is what you need to be aware of, especially if you're interested in alien life, especially if you're interested in government secrets. You have to be incredibly skeptical.